Solo perché vi racconto questa storia non vuol dire che alla fine io sia viva. Questa è una di quelle storie. Ogni azienda di successo ha un grande passato alle spalle. Ben ha preso 2 lauree a Berkeley, in marketing e in botanica.
È la migliore erba del mondo.
Ben teneva il 99% della violenza fuori dagli affari. E l'altro 1%? A quello pensava John.
Ragazzi, il vostro è un lavoro pulito. Ma il cartello si sposta al nord. Vogliono un bene John Point nella corsia 3.
Vi amo, ragazzi.
Saremo noi 3 ora.
Eh sì, sto con tutti e 2.
I sat down to write Savages and I wrote the first chapter, 2 words that have now become infamous. Yeah, one of them is you and the other one isn't. And then all of a sudden, to be honest with you, I'm writing from the point of view of a 20-something-year-old Orange County woman, which I'm not, you know. But she took over the story, at least the first part of it, to tell it, you know. I don't know how that happens, but I think that, you know, I know these people well. They're not based on any particular individuals, but they are people that I hang out with, surf with, do martial arts with, go to clubs with, da-da-da. And so I felt I knew them really well, you know. But there's also, you know, beyond the sort of realism, I mean, there's also that feeling of creation. Do you know what I mean? I think that there's still room for the imagination. When you take a character like O, you know, I've been asked a lot, what made you think you can write a woman, from a woman's point of view? And I would say, well, did I get it right? That's really all I'm interested in. I don't think the author really matters. You know, is it accurate? Is it right? And do you feel her? You know, and I felt I did.
Vogliamo lavorare con i vostri metodi e la vostra clientela.
A noi non interessa, niente di personale.
Temo che il nostro cliente prenderà la cosa molto sul personale.
Devono imparare il rispetto. Ho trovato il loro punto debole.
Oh mio Dio.
I began to feel that we were getting too constrained in our style, in this genre, in the noir genre, that there were too many rules that were imposed from the outside and arbitrarily. And so I guess I felt a little, it's an American word, snarky about that. Do you know what I mean? I got in a bad mood about it, and I wanted to kind of throw my elbows a little bit and push it out. But also, I just wanted to write a book in the way that I heard it in my head, you know? And so I thought, yeah, okay, I will, you know? And so, but I also think writing about a certain generation, and I think that that's the way that that generation hears its stories now. It's not a single narrative. It's from multiple points of view and multiple media, all simultaneous. I watched my son study, and he would have headsets on, listening to music, television on, looking at a book and looking at the computer. But he's getting high grades. I couldn't say a thing about it because it's working for him. And so I think for you guys, you know, that's the way you get your stories. And so I wanted to write a story about that generation in that generation's language. So if I thought that a certain part would be understood better as a piece of film, I wrote it in screenplay form. If I thought it would be understood better as poetry, I wrote it in that form.
Tu vieni a casa mia. Minacci le mie figlie. Non sai che qui è pieno di telecamere.
Dopo aver ammazzato te e le tue figlie, brucerò la casa.
Listen, I had a lot of fun writing that book. Those 2 books collectively, I guess. You know, I had such a clear image in my head and music, really. You know, it must have driven copy editors insane because, you know, I'd indent a line 13 spaces, not 12. I wanted it 13 because that's the amount of silence that I heard before the word started, you know. And I was very influenced by 2 other media, really. Nouvelle Vague film, both French and Italian, and what was called West Coast or cool school jazz of the early 1960s. And so if I was writing I literally had jazz riffs in my head, and she's sort of the Paul Desmond of it all, and Sean kind of the Chet Baker, and so I would literally hear certain jazz riffs and wanted it that way. It sounds crazy, but that's the way it was. Oliver Stone is an iconic director, and I thought there were some great performances in the film. It's weird, it's strange to sit there and look, up and see, these people that you had running around your head are now John Travolta and Salma Hayek, and, they're running around a screen and they're really large, but fun and interesting.
Me hai davvero delusa, Lado. Sono dovuta venire a Gringolandia per scoprire tutto? Credevi che non mi sarei accorta di un ammanco di $3 milioni e della morte di 7 dei miei uomini? Da quando tu prendi decisioni da solo? Io ti ho creato, figlio di puttana, io sono stata!
This is going to sound very presumptuous, yeah, but I was hoping to do with these two books what Fellini and Truffaut, Melville, Godard, what those cats did with film narrative back in the day, I was hoping to do with noir narrative. So break the rules, see things in a different way, write it cheaper and dirtier. And so sometimes I literally thought, well, what's the narrative equivalent of a jump cut? Do you know what I mean? What we're not supposed to do in narrative structure is to go from a close-up to a close-up. But what if I did? What if I switched points of view, not only within a chapter, not only within a paragraph, but sometimes within the same sentence, as those guys sometimes did with the camera? What would be the narrative equivalent of that long tracking shot in the 400 blows taken from the roof? And so I definitely was experimenting with those things and was very influenced by them, but also influenced by their courage. And I also think, though, if you're going to write about a relationship between two men and a woman, you're going to look at Jules et Jim.
Fermo. C'è qualcosa che non va nella tua storia d'amore.
Se vedono che sei debole, dovrai ucciderli prima o poi.
I think Oliver did a good job with it. At the end of the day, I liked the film. Was I afraid? Sure. But listen, I'm afraid when I sit down to write the books, and I'm not sure it's a bad thing.